Back for Blood. The game that was supposed to be the spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead, and somehow ended up being the weird cousin nobody invites to the family reunion. When this game was announced, fans of Left 4 Dead like me were pretty hyped. Turtle Rock Studios, the people behind the original Left 4 Dead, coming back to make a new co-op zombie shooter? How could this possibly go wrong? Spoiler, it went very, very wrong. I'm not going to be talking about the absolutely terrible launch this game had that pretty much killed its entire player base in like a week and a half. If you guys want to know anything about that, there's a couple great videos linked down in the description below. I'm more going to be talking about my experience with Back 4 Blood and why it hurts me on a spiritual level that I don't completely understand. When I say this game went wrong, I mean catastrophically spectacularly wrong. The kind of wrong that makes you wonder if the people who made this game had ever actually played Left 4 Dead. It's like they took everything people loved about that series, threw it in the trash, and then set the trash on fire, all while asking us for $60. Let's start with the gameplay because, oh boy, this is where the pain begins. Back 4 Blood tries to mix Left 4 Dead's simple, chaotic fun with a super weird deck building card system that literally nobody asked for. Instead of jumping into a match and immediately blasting zombies, you're forced to carefully construct a deck of perks and abilities. It's like if Left 4 Dead made you do your taxes before you could pick up a shotgun. The card system itself is needlessly complicated and sucks all the momentum out of the game. You spend more time fiddling with loadouts and builds than actually playing the game, and when you finally get into the quote-unquote action, you realize that your perfectly crafted deck means nothing when the game decides to throw a billion enemies at you with no warning. And the difficulty scaling, it's not even scaling, it's a brick wall. You either breeze through a level with no problem or get steamrolled so hard you start questioning your life choices. The game loves spawning hordes and special ridden all at once, and if you don't have the perfect deck build, you're pretty much toast. Thankfully, I never made the mistake of playing Back 4 Blood a whole lot when it was a new game, but from what I've heard, the Nightmare difficulty and the No Hope difficulty were literally impossible when the game first came out. Like, there was nothing you could do, there was no deck you could create, there were no teammates you could play with that would actually help you get through the level. There was a whole controversy about this, and Turtle Rock nerfed the difficulties, but unfortunately the damage was already done, and everyone that gave a shit about this game was already long gone. Even the gunplay, which should be a high point, feels really off. The weapons lack impact, the aiming feels super floaty, and the hit detection is so inconsistent that you never know if your shots are actually going to register. In a game where shooting is, well, the primary mechanic, that's kind of a big deal. One of the best things about Left 4 Dead was its characters. Lewis, Zoe, Nick, Ellis, Rochelle, Coach, any one of the characters that you wanted to play, they were memorable, funny, and had actual personalities. Back 4 Blood's characters, I couldn't tell you a single thing about any of them. They are literally walking, talking cardboard cutouts with the charm of a wet napkin. The dialogue is another issue. Left 4 Dead had iconic lines and great banter.
Man, I Zoe's never gonna go for a man like me.
Ellis, ask yourself, what would you do?
Oh, bro, man, that reminds me of this.
Girl, what are you
I wasn't
doing?
thinking.
Listen, if you let your guard down for 1 minute, we all pay the price.
You know one of the reasons we're still alive out here? The cell towers.
Cell towers.
See, in the cities, it wasn't just population density. There were cell towers everywhere. Messing with people's brains, feeding them signals.
I'm gonna regret it. But who is doing this?
The Anunnaki, the reptilian elite, are blood-drinking, flesh-eating alien overlords.
Wow. Is there nothing you don't believe?
Yeah, the lamestream media.
Damn.
Back 4 Blood, it's like listening to coworkers try to make small talk at the office. No chemistry, no humor, just bland one-liners that sound like they were written by a robot. And the worst part? The game actually tries to give these characters backstories, but they're delivered through boring, static dialogue dumps that nobody cares about. Left 4 Dead told its story through environmental details and character interactions. Back 4 Blood just throws walls of text at you and hopes you'll care. A majority of the game is trying to make it out like the Ridden are this massive threat that's going to break through the walls of what's left of humanity at any time. But realistically, they aren't even slightly scary. I mean, they walk around and just stand there doing absolutely nothing for entire missions, which is a little bit weird considering in Left 4 Dead, most of the common infected do a very similar thing. However, in Left 4 Dead, you can see what humanity tried to do to stop the infected before it was completely overrun. In Back 4 Blood, you're just given a really bland dialogue dump by some general you don't care about as he tells you to complete missions. It's like a really boring version of Call of Duty, except with nothing that makes Call of Duty a household title. And what I mean by this is that the environmental storytelling in this game just sucks. It has to like sit in front of your face constantly and smack you over the head with signs that are like, oh, we've been overrun, or oh, we didn't make it, save us, stuff like that. Whereas Left 4 Dead looks like the realistic outcome of a zombie apocalypse. I mean, as you make your way through the Dark Carnival campaign or the Parish, you see all of the cars of people that were trying to escape, all the belongings that were discarded, what was left of the military, abandoned Humvees, ammo dumps, everything's on fire, and it's incredible. In Back 4 Blood, you don't see any of that. You just see boarded up windows and the occasional dead person, and then you're told by some random lore drop that, well, everyone here is dead, and you're like, oh, everyone here is dead, you don't say. My frustration with this game cannot be overstated. I want to talk about the special Ridden, and I say special very loosely because they are the worst designs I've ever seen for a special enemy in any title in recent memory. The game's version of Left 4 Dead's Special Infected just aren't interesting. They're not special. They're the same 3 enemies copy-pasted with slightly different abilities. You've got the Tall Boy, the Crusher, and the Bruiser, all of which are just big guys who smash you with minor tweaks. It's like they ran out of ideas and hoped nobody would notice. The Hawker, Stalker, and Stinger are basically different flavors of the same annoying enemy. They jump around, spit goo, and pin you down. They're like the Jockey and the Hunter from Left 4 Dead, but without any of the fun or strategy or anything that makes them unique, and it's just frustrating. And then there's this super cool, awesome special Ridden called the Snitch, an enemy whose entire job is to call more hordes when it spots you, which would be fine if the game's horde mechanics weren't already so busted. You'll find yourself in situations where you're fighting endless waves of enemies because the game decided to chain spawn snitches, and it is the worst combat experience I've ever seen in a survival horror shooter. But let's not forget the Reeker family, the Reeker, the Exploder, and the Wretch. They're all just really bad variations of the Boomer, but somehow less interesting and more annoying. Their only real tactic is to rush you and either explode or puke. And when multiple show up, it's pure chaos in the worst way. Compare that to Left 4 Dead's unique and varied Infected. Every one of them had distinct abilities and forced different strategies. Back 4 Blood's enemy design feels lazy and uninspired, and it really does break my heart because I had so much hype for this game going in, just like I think a lot of us did. And when we ended up getting the final product with really shitty copies of the Infected we used to love in the old titles, it was just the nail in the coffin. Oh boy, and now we get to talk about the super memorable levels in Back 4 Blood. Remember the iconic levels in Left 4 Dead? The airport in Dead Air, the roller coaster in Dark Carnival. These were memorable, creative, and full of personality. Back 4 Blood's levels are just kind of, well, there. They're generic post-apocalyptic environments with no real standout moments. You'll barely remember any of them after you're done playing. And what's worse is the objectives are painfully repetitive. Every mission feels like a slight variation of get from point A to point B and hold out while fighting a horde. There's no creativity, no memorable set pieces, it's literally just the same thing over and over again. I wish that I had more to talk about in level design, but Back 4 Blood's levels are so bland that there just isn't enough content to even talk about it for 2 minutes. They are terrible. They feel like they are literally just formats from Canva for bad thumbnails that they tried to make into a map. Before I talk about a lot of the technical issues with the game, I do want to give credit where credit is due. The game has been fixed quite a lot. There's been pretty much regular updates from Turtle Rock Studios that have actually fixed a lot of the performance issues, and the game is in a way better state, you know, from a mechanic standpoint than it was on day one, but that doesn't mean that it's without issues that will ruin your game completely, crash your PC, or just make you want to cry onto your mousepad. On top of everything else, Back 4 Blood had its fair share of technical problems. Bugs, weird hit detection, and performance issues made the already frustrating gameplay even worse. When you're trying to fight off a horde and your shots aren't registering and you're fighting them at 2 FPS and it looks like a stop motion movie from the 1930s, it's pretty safe to say that it's not the most fun experience. Matchmaking was also a nightmare at launch. You'd frequently get paired with bots when players dropped out, and these bots were somehow even worse than Left 4 Dead's notoriously bad AI.
Is he stuck or?
Locked, loaded, and ready to roll.
He's struggling.
Well, I'm done.
You're almost here, Breaker. Keep up the good work. Oh, fuck! No! He figured out how to fall. Oh, God!
Imagine fighting off a horde while your bot teammates stare at walls and refuse to heal you. It's definitely a vibe. And I wish I could tell you guys that matchmaking has gotten better, and maybe it has from like a server standpoint or its ability to work as a matchmaking program, but the unfortunate reality is that the player base on Back 4 Blood now is so small that if you're looking for a team, you're either going to get matched with the most try-hard individuals that have ever existed, and they are not going to take any mercy on you, and they will make fun of you the second you make the most minor mistake. On the flip side, finding a game is a rarity. I've had times where I've queued, sat there for almost 45 minutes and just not found a game. I've had times where I've queued, gone to make food, come back, and I still haven't found a match. It's really sad to see because I feel like Turtle Rock definitely understood that matchmaking was broken, but they killed their entire player base before fixing it, so now there's just literally nobody to match you with. The bots are definitely better and they work better as automated teammates, however, it's still just not very fun when you're playing with bots. It's kind of about matching with real players, as that's what varies your gameplay and makes for a unique playthrough each and every time. Unfortunately, that just isn't possible anymore. So I bet you guys are probably wondering, after hearing all of these beautiful pieces of technological advancement that we have in the gaming industry, how could Back 4 Blood have possibly failed? At the end of the day, Back 4 Blood failed because it tried too hard to reinvent the wheel. Left 4 Dead's magic was in its simplicity. Pick a character, grab a gun, survive. Back 4 Blood buried that formula under layers of unnecessary mechanics, uninspired design, and an overall lack of charm. It didn't help that the game was always online, meaning if the servers were down, you couldn't even play solo. Combine that with the broken difficulty, the lifeless characters, the bland levels, and you have a game that actively pushes you away from enjoying it. Back 4 Blood could have been great. It had the right people behind it and a fan base desperate for a new co-op zombie shooter. But instead of learning from what made Left 4 Dead so beloved, it gave us a soulless, frustrating mess. And that is why Back 4 Blood is awful. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to reinstall Left 4 Dead 2 and cleanse my palate from this shit show of a game.